Good morning, afternoon, whenever. I am going to do a few live streams today. Haven't done a few in a few days. Had a bunch of kids around, grandkids, etc. So there's a bunch of stuff that has gone on, and I kind of decided to break it up a little bit in parts. So I'm going to do a bunch of them and go from there. So the first one we're going to talk about this at this point in time is the alliance that has come about between one of Trump's senior or major advisors of his first term on the Supreme Court and governor of California. Now I'm in California. I'm in California. Sorry about that. I'm in California, and I am no. Thank you, by the way, Joe. I'm in California. I'm no fan of Newsom, just to be frank with you. But I thought it was an interesting alliance, and it may go to the issue of tariffs and when those might end. And I did a video about a prior lawsuit that was filed, and I thought this was interesting. So anyway, this is not legal advice, obviously. Before I start, just a couple of quick things. What do you call a long-nosed mammal who loves to garden? A yardvark. And why did the dog, and I love dogs, but this one concerned me. Why didn't the dog see a psychiatrist? Because he wasn't allowed on the couch. Now, that is absolutely untrue at my house, where the dog sleeps on the couch. But this one actually couldn't get on the couch. And last but not least, at least for this one, what did the dolphins say to the other fish? You need to get a porpoise in life. Anyway, so I wanted to talk a little about this issue about that came up. So last week, 10 days ago, on a Thursday, there was a lawsuit filed in Florida. It was filed by some organizations, a libertarian. I think it's asserted to being a libertarian organization. It was funded and I think funded and run by Leonard Leo, who happened to be Trump's, I guess, senior advisor on the Supreme Court as to the first term. And under his leadership, Coney Barrett, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh were appointed to the bench, and that led to a conservative majority, the majority that exists today, the either 6-3, 5-4, depending on how you see it. But this gentleman, Leonard Leo, was instrumental in getting those justices on the Supreme Court. He advised Trump and was a very close advisor. So they filed with his group about 10 days ago in Florida on behalf of business. They filed an action challenging the tariffs in China because it was a small business and they were importing the materials from China and it was going to cost them an arm and a leg. That action was filed in district court in Florida and is pending. An injunction is being sought, but nothing has happened yet. And this week, so the advisor, Leonard Leo, is taking a position opposite to the Trump administration, even though he advised the Trump administration on the Supreme Court. And the issue is, since he put those justices in power, will that impact on how they vote in the future? Will they recuse themselves? Recuse means, will they step down and not vote on the case? Or will they be influenced because he was the one who was instrumental in getting them on the court? It's interesting because, again, his position runs contrary to the White House's position on tariffs. So coincidentally, this week, and so that was a private business. The lawsuit is private business suing the government, claiming the tariffs are unconstitutional because it's not the power of the president, taxing power. And there's a doctrine called the major questions doctrine, which means that if it's a issue that affects, the country's commerce, then if Congress is going to pass that duty or responsibility onto somebody else, it's got to be clearly delineated what they do and how they do it. And so that's kind of where it is. And that was the arguments they've made. And that case is pending in Florida. I don't know if there's been any. Well, I'm sure there hasn't been an injunction granted. We would hear about it. So 2 days ago, California, through Newsom, filed a similar action, but this on behalf of the state, saying that California, and factually it's correct, California is the largest trading partner of all these countries and will be the most impacted state because it has the largest economy in the country. That was the basic argument. Used the same legal arguments as Leonard Leo in his lawsuit or his sponsored lawsuit in Florida. And this was just filed. And it's really interesting because these gentlemen are on, I'm using the term gentlemen, may perhaps loosely, but they're on the exact opposite political spectrums, but they're both challenging the constitutionality of the tariffs. One is focusing exclusively on China, and the one is California is much broader in terms of it. And the issue again, whether the executive branch has the power to tariff, whether there has to be a specific grant of that authority from Congress, and was there, and if even if there was, does Congress then have to closely supervise whoever they grant that authority to? And what's interesting to me is I think one of these cases is going to end up in the Supreme Court, if not this one, either the California case, the Florida case, or some other case. If the tariff issue has not been resolved, the China issue, I think it's going to end up in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will decide if the executive branch, under these circumstances, can implement tariffs, even though under the Constitution it says that taxing and people have equated tariffs to taxing is the power of Congress, not the executive branch. So I expect this question to get up to the Supreme Court quickly. And based upon the speed that question gets to the Supreme Court, I think that will control the timing of when the tariffs with China are adjudicated and some deal reached. Because I think once the White House believes that the Supreme Court may issue a ruling on this, they probably don't want a ruling. They probably don't want to take the chance that the Supreme Court would limit the executive branch's power. And again, in this kind of odd situation, because of the connection between Leonard Leo and the three Supreme Court justices, if I were, just my opinion, if I were in the White House, I'd be concerned that they might have allegiances elsewhere, and they might have constitutional beliefs elsewhere. Now, what's one other fact that's really interesting about Leonard Leo? His organization, so we have one, he was the advisor on the Supreme Court for the Trump administration during first term. He got the three Supreme Court justices in power. He also, as it turns out, his organization helped fund the organization that filed an amicus brief on behalf of Alpine Securities in the U.S. Supreme Court challenging FINRA's power. So they're not only opposing tariffs, but they're also opposing the full body of the regulatory power. And that's Alpine's request to the Supreme Court to intervene and to rule that FINRA is not a constitutionally valid entity. So the same guy who's now at odds with the Trump administration on the issue of tariffs is also challenging regulatory power on behalf of Alpine. Interesting connection. I don't know where that ends up going. This live stream is more interested in focusing on the kind of the way that they're in the same position, California and Florida, and that some advisor who was a mainstay for Trump in the Supreme Court is now in agreement with the California governor. That's an interesting combo. Anyway, I think one of these cases is going to be really important. It's going to be I think one of them is going to get before the Supreme Court. It'll be an interesting decision if it gets that far, because I think it'll lead to the resolution of the tariff issue. That's kind of how I see it. So that's why I brought it up. And interesting, but that politics makes strange bedfellows, as they say. And we will see how this plays out. And we'll also see how it plays out with Alpine and their support for that. Anyway, just want to do a quick one on this. And thank you for listening. If you have questions afterwards, please put it in the comments. I will be doing some other live streams involving other interesting topics, I think, a little later, and I'll post those. Anyway, have a great day. See you soon, and be well, and take care. And that's all I have to say.